Hello, Once Forest Focus, take two of today's show. The Carabao Cup is over for Nottingham Forest for another season, but it feels like a good campaign might only just be beginning. As we discuss that game in full, the remaining days of the transfer window, and preview Wolves at home in the Premier League in the company of, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, I'll say Pete, how are you doing? But also, if people in the chat just tell us if they can hear this fine, that would be very helpful. Pete Blackburn, how are you doing?
I'm good. Nice to be at the heart of another Forest Focus shambles, but I always say that it's the authenticity of the pod that people like, so hopefully that sticks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking the blame for this one. Oh, Rob C said it's all good now in the chat. I don't know what the problem was, but it feels like it's better, so that's good. Right, I'll reintroduce Simon Bristow for people who missed the incredible banter of the 2-minute take one that we did. Simon Bristow, also known as Our Glorious Banners on Twitter, does some great work and has some exciting stuff ahead, but he's here to talk Forest and transfers and look ahead to the Wolves game. As I say, Simon Bristow, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm glad that we're doing a take two here. We'll get it right. But yeah, excited to have a chat about last night and Saturday to come and everything else.
Good. I think we're okay. Mark Hill says we're lagging a bit. I think hopefully that's just for you, Mark. So no offense there, but everyone else thinks we're fine. So we're going to push on. We're going to plow on. Right. Same question as first time around, Simon. Talk to us about last night and just what you made of it in general.
Yeah. I went to the game, bit of trepidation. Didn't feel like something that we were kind of all particularly up for. I think with the reduced crowd, felt like one that people were kind of not too excited by. And then the team news came out, and we'd made a lot of changes, and they hadn't made many, and you kind of got that bit more fear. And then they scored after 18 seconds, and you thought, yeah, all of this is going to go pretty horribly. But after another 5 or 10 minutes of settling down, we were absolutely brilliant. Some really good performances from players that we haven't seen yet at all this season, and kind of thought we were very unlucky not to win it, and go away from the game quite excited about what's to come, really, with some of those performances that we saw last night.
What about you, Pete, in general? Just while I tweet a fresh link out, and then we'll get into more specifics.
Well, Simon and I were saying before we went live the first time, we'd sort of forgotten that it could be fun to watch Forest in that way. I thought it was an absolute joy to watch for the most part, cutting out the obvious sort of beginning and ends of the game not being so fun. I mean, I think there's always something really thrilling about the opportunity to see new players turning out for the club. I guess as a kid, it was that sort of exciting feeling like unwrapping presents at Christmas. I think you don't ever quite lose that as an adult, or certainly I haven't. I think I just enjoy that process of going from having almost no sense of what a player is and what a person is to having a really sort of colourful understanding of how they control the ball, the way they run, the sort of magic moments they can produce. So I love all those things, and I think that was partly why I enjoyed last night so much, and particularly because some of those debutants and new players put in such good performances. I mean, overall, I thought it was just a great insight into what Forest can be capable of against the better sides in this country, I guess. I mean, we were patched together 11, like Simon said, but still showed real cohesion in attack, some exciting patterns of play. There were lots of players really busting a gut to make an impact and fight their way into the side. I mean, before the season, I think I mentioned on a previous pod, I'd heard that there was a very positive environment around the sort of first team playing side of the club and around Nuno and the staff. And you hear that sort of stuff a lot, I guess, especially when you're a journalist. But I think you saw that sort of demonstrated last night rather. It looked like an environment where all the players in the squad are desperate to demonstrate their quality and their desire, and I think that can only really bode well for the rest of the season. You know, it looks like we've got depth, competition for the first time since being in the Premier League now, players that can come off the bench and make an impact and that we can get excited about, rather than Nuno sort of looking around or Steve Cooper looking around and just thinking, you know, what can I really do here? So yeah, really positive. Enjoyed the game, lots of fun, lots to be positive about, I think.
The chat last night in the comment section, Simon, and on our stream was a lot of it was dominated by Taiwo. I got sucked in on Twitter on Taiwo, so I don't know if I'm overemphasizing how much of a factor he was in the discourse around last night's game. Really split opinions. A few people saying he's done, he's finished. Others saying he just needs time, he just needs minutes. That's the camp that I'm in. What about you, from what you've seen of him so far, specifically including last night?
Yeah, I will be in the same camp as you, Matt. I think he probably needs a bit more time still. I kind of thought last night it was a Taiwo-type performance. He never looks completely fit. He's got a strange running gait, and he kind of gets involved in elements of the game and then kind of drifts away in elements. I think we've got to realise that he did have what was, quite a bad injury, and certainly a lengthy layoff on a couple of occasions last season. And then there's been some form of personal issue as well that was reported over the summer. So he missed a bit of pre-season, and managers will say eternally that, if a player misses an element of pre-season, it has a huge knock-on effect in terms of how they start the season, and it takes them maybe a month or two to get up to speed. So my hope is that it's nothing more serious than that. He just needs a bit more time to get up to speed. Obviously, he played 90 minutes last night, which perhaps is a bit of a surprise. But perhaps it's a case of they wanted to get some proper minutes into his legs to do exactly that and try and get him up to speed a little bit more and improving in the coming weeks and months. I can kind of understand both sides of the argument that's been made about him. But I'm definitely hopeful that it is just a bit of he needs a bit more time to get back to his absolute best, because as we all know, his absolute best is by far the best striker at the club. And that's with a lot of affection for Chris Wood and everything that he's been doing. But Taiwo on form is at a different level, I think.
I think in the thumbnail for the video, Pete, I put Forest striker problem. On one hand, that problem is we need to buy one. I think that's a common consensus that I still go along with. On the other hand, like Simon, I see so much value in Taiwo if we can get him fit. And to do that, he needs minutes. And my concern around Taiwo is how does he get those minutes if we sign a striker? Because he looks to me like he's obviously blowing up after 50 minutes last night, 60 minutes. So I feel like he needs 5 or 6 starts in a row, and he's not going to get them. You on WhatsApp said to me you think he can get there with 30 minutes off the bench for X number of weeks. Is that your stance? Do you feel that there's still a comfortable road back for him in the next few weeks if he can stay fit?
Well, we obviously don't know what the situation is going to be in terms of whether there is going to be another player competing for that spot or not. I mean, look, I'm absolutely no expert whatsoever on the sort of sports science side of things, but there must be ways to get him up to speed, whether that is half an hour at the end of games and slowly increasing that involvement, or whether it's time playing for the B team, whatever it needs to be. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to play 90 minutes in the Premier League with the level of fitness that he's at right now, but I just don't see that's going to be absolutely necessary to get him back. I mean, he's played pretty decent minutes now, probably certainly more than I thought he was going to, given that he played the whole game last night. And I'm just not convinced that this is as big an issue as it seems to have been made out to be. I mean, it feels to me that the reason we're talking about Taiwo to this extent is because he missed a penalty last night, and he missed it in dramatic and ugly fashion. I think if that hadn't have happened, if we'd have won that game through the penalty shootout, whether he steps up and slots one away or someone else does or whatever, I just don't think we'd be talking about this in anywhere near the same level that we are. And you just can't have that sort of outcome bias over thought processes. It's just one penalty. I mean, he played 90 minutes last night. I don't think anyone thought that he would do that. It was probably more than they wanted to. Clearly, they were looking to bring Wood on, but there's an issue of Anderson potentially, and that had to change. I mean, that's understandable. But I thought he did a relatively decent job against the good side, all in all. He occupied decent Premier League centre-halves. He gave the players around him a chance to shine. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you asked Jota Silva and Sosa about Taiwo's performance, they'd be pleased that he'd been occupying those defenders and giving them a little bit of space and something to hit. And I don't think there's anything dramatic going on here. I mean, on top of all of that stuff, I just feel like the guy deserves a bit more respect than he's getting, to be honest. I mean, this is a bloke who's been constantly written off by Forest fans at the football club. I mean, the same people who were slagging him off on Twitter or on the comments in this podcast last night will no doubt be the same people who were relentlessly criticising him for the first few months of his Forest career, saying he didn't look like a footballer, all that sort of stuff. Do you see what he went on to do that season? I mean, there's an awful lot of our being in the Premier League is thanks to what Taiwo did for us. I just think we need to put a bit of respect on that and give him a bit of time. Look, I'm no medical expert, so I can't really comment on what we need to do with him or where exactly he's at. But to me, he didn't look like someone who's in like massive danger. He looked like someone who's probably should have played an hour and played that hour relatively well. I think he was absolutely fine. Clearly not at his best. When he's at his best, he looks a little bit less cumbersome, I guess, and a little bit sharper. Like I think he was great using his body. He was great chesting the ball and trying to get other people in the game. Not so sharp when he needed a little touch in the box and to get space and get a shot off. But I think that will come, and that's always been the case with Taiwo. So look, I'm not desperately worried about it. However they get him time or get him sharper off the pitch or on the pitch, fine. They'll know what they're doing much better than I do. But in the meantime, we've seen what it can be like at this football club when we get behind our players. You see that when the Forza Garibaldi banners come out. I don't really understand why we can't just be like that away from the City ground as well. Give the guy a break. Be thankful for what he's done for the club, and fingers crossed he'll come back. I've got every hope that he can.
Yeah, I think we've seen flashes of what he can do. Going back to the Southampton game, he kind of ragdolled Bednarek, who's a big striker. That's what he's about. I tweeted out last night the video of the goal he scored against Arsenal, and he scored in every game against Arsenal, which is worth noting. So he's scoring the top defenders. But the one where he just shoved Saliba aside, or knocked Saliba aside, and scored a fairly inconsequential goal in terms of the game because we lost it. But not many players do that to Saliba, and it bounce off his arse into the right place to finish. But you kind of earn that luck by doing that to a player of Saliba's caliber. He's not. I think Simon's right. He's not polished. He's never going to be polished, but he's got attributes that are really valuable. Even if he's not starting, 30 minutes against tired defenders with a fit Taiwo is massive. And the other point, Simon, I kind of feel like we can miss is players' fortunes can change so quickly. Like Carlos Miguel, we were wondering, like, where is he? What's happening? Is he a dud? And then, after 90 minutes plus penalties last night, we're saying, should he be starting v Wolves? So one game can change everything, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I mean, I completely agree with everything that Pete said. I think he's very eloquently put forward the case for supporting Taiwo, and we should absolutely do that. I think, was it almost 15 goals he scored in his first season with us? And that was with an injury and with a getting up to speed month or two at the start of the season. The start of last season, was it 7 goals in 7 games or something close to that, and then got injured? So this is a guy that knows how to score goals. And I think you're absolutely right, Matt. Highlight things that he does against some of the best defenders in the league. So when he's on it and when he's at his fitness levels that he needs to be at, I think he's an excellent striker. I do also agree with all of the comments about, well, we need options, because can we be reliant on him based on perceived lack of form at the moment? And yes, he's got a bit of an injury record when at Forest. I think he was a bit better before he joined us, but there has been some other injuries in his career. I think let's give him a little bit more time to see if he can get up to speed. And who knows, maybe against Wolves on Saturday, he comes on for 30 minutes or so and scores 2 goals. And that is the moment, like you say, Matt, that one game changes all of his fortunes and he's back up and running. But I know we're going to come on to talking about strikers. I think we probably do need another option amongst it, but we probably needed that whether Taiwo's fit and raring to go, in and out form, because having 3 options is going to make us a much better team.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone agrees we need a striker, ideally. One small point on that is I was just thinking, like, Newcastle they're a big club. They've only got Isak, they've got Wilson, who's injured. They need a striker. Lots of teams need a striker. It's easier said than done, and I hope we can work it out. Let's talk now about the name that's mostly in the frame. Let's move on from Gimenez. I don't think there's any particular point talking about him anymore, Pete. Omar Marmoush, have I got that right? Have I lost his name? Where is it? If I got that wrong, apologies. I said to Pete, I like to research players, and I have to hold my hands up and say, with the internet stuff this morning, I haven't had much time to research him properly. But Pete, he sounds interesting from what I have seen of him. He's a versatile striker, had a breakout year in the Bundesliga last year with 12 goals for Eintracht Frankfurt. It sounds like the price is around 20 million. What do you make of it from what you've been able to glean on him as a player?
I think he looks like a talented player. From what I can see, he doesn't look like the sort of striker that I was expecting us to be going for. I think we've been looking at players who are sort of real genuine number 9s. But obviously it's a very difficult market, and we're working our way down a list. So there are going to be some compromises as you go down that list. That's just how it naturally works. From what I've seen, he looks like probably a more natural wide forward, but somebody who's seems to have been moving towards playing potentially more often, more recently, and clearly had a good record in the Bundesliga last year, which is great, because it's a high quality league with lots of good teams, and it always feels like it's sort of relatively transferable, which is helpful. It looks like someone with an eye for goal, sharp movement, versatile. Obviously useful if you end up with a fit Taiwo again. You're going to want people who can move into other roles, play alongside him or out wide or whatever. So that sort of versatility is useful. I mean, his statistical profile suggests a player who contributes in terms of winning the ball and pressing high up the pitch and doing that side of the work, as well as being a goal threat, ball carrier, sort of all-round pest. So I think that stuff is promising. Can't claim to be an expert on him whatsoever. I'm not even sure if I've really seen him play a full game knowingly, to be honest. I certainly would have watched games of him playing in, but not focused on him. I think the other positive really is that we've been linked before. Someone mentioned to me this morning or last night, I think that in our first Premier League summer, he was somebody we had an eye on. So that would suggest that he's a player that probably George Sirianos has been following and is interested in. And I trust his judgment. So I think that's important to note. And fingers crossed, he could be a good option for us. I mean, I think the key for me is, particularly after last night, the anxiety can be lessened about being desperate in this area. Jota showed that he's a scrapper and that he can play in central areas and what he can do in the box in terms of instinctive finishing. Sousa showed that he can push those attacking players and give us options. And it may be that you have to be flexible and you don't end up with that sort of big number 9 that you're desperate for in every game. But, we can't really afford to have a squad where we have every single option covered with a backup and, a backup for the backup. So I think we just need to be aware that we're in a decent position at the moment. We've got good options in the squad. And while we clearly would like someone in that position, and I would like someone in that position, we don't need to be desperate about it. We can add players now from a position of decent strength. We've revamped the squad, we've trimmed the squad, and the guiding principle now has to be you add quality. If we can add quality permanently, great, do it. Someone that you've been watching, someone that you've done the due diligence on. If we can do that, brilliant. If not, look at the loan market. If not, stick with what we have and nurture what we have. And any of those options I'm comfortable with. I'm just not comfortable with us panicking. So hopefully we don't do that. It looks like the links are sort of quietened up a bit, so it may just be media talk in the wake of the first 2 striker deals sort of falling apart. So fingers crossed, we just carry on as we have been doing, and we end up with just a bit more quality in the squad, but nothing silly.
Just to mix a little bit of eye test with stats then. The stats on screen are, as ever, from WT Analysis on Twitter, WT_analysis. Give him a follow, does some good work. People listening, not watching, it basically shows that he's a threat in the box. He puts himself about. He wins duels. 70% of his aerial duels won. He can dribble the ball. Slight weakness in terms of his passing, possibly, but it kind of suggests that he is mobile, puts himself about, and he's got an eye for goal. And just to back that up, Dave, possibly from Arnold, says that he's seen him a couple of times in the Bundesliga. He's mobile. He threats defenders. Good, different option. Is that the main point, Simon, for you? Good, different option to what we have?
Yeah, I didn't know that we'd been linked with him previously. And like Pete, I like that. It means that it's someone that we've been monitoring and think that can fit into the system of play that we want to be putting on the pitch. And I think that's a really important point. And similar with the signing of Moreno, I know we've kind of been linked with him 2 or 3 times since we got promotion, and finally we've got him through the door. I do agree that if we're going to have a third striker, it needs to be someone that offers something slightly different. And Taiwo Wood are more of your traditional big striker, hold-up play. They've both got different attributes as well. But this guy, I will admit, I've never seen him play, and I don't think I'd ever heard of him before. But from the analysis and the couple of clips I've seen in the last 24 hours, he does seem to be that slightly different style of striker, which just, again, is giving us options on the pitch, which is great. If he's starting a game because he's going to suit the opponent, or if he's coming off the pitch and we need to do something a bit different, coming onto the pitch because we need to do something a bit different. I think this sounds like a solid signing. In a way, I might be more excited about the potential of this one than an Nketiah or Gimenez, albeit I'm sure they were excellent options as well. So yeah, hopefully this one gets done and it does give us that third striking option, something a bit different as well. And maybe even he's someone that can play in a range of positions, which is good for kind of squad depth as well.
Yeah, definitely. Dave from Wollerton, not Arnold, sorry, and not the traditional Twitter Dave from Arnold commenter. Yeah, I think so. And I like that it doesn't sound like a panic signing. I like that I've not heard of him. I've not heard of a lot of players. But yeah, I feels like it's like Pete says, George Sirianos and his scouting network have done something rather than we've opened up a list of contacts with agents and plucked off a name that sounds, did well 5 years ago. And like Simon says, I mean, maybe I was a bit down on the Gimenez transfer. I don't know. I think I've said this before. There's a video of him scoring all his goals last season, and I think Premier League keepers save about half of them. But I'm sure he's a good player. Let's move on from him and just touch on any other transfer chat. I guess, Pete, the main other name right now that we're seeing is Bove from Roma, unless I'm wrong. Sounds like there might be some legs in that. Haven't heard anything about Ryan Yates missing the game last night. Elliot Anderson, a bit of an injury concern. Danilo, obviously, out. Bove, I'll call him that for now, looks like a bit of a Ryan Yates type and impressed under Mourinho. Would you be on board with that kind of signing if we don't know everything about him?
I'm not going to be massively judgmental about it, but it seems like a sort of role we might not desperately need. I mean, a lot of it comes down to what happens with this potential injury situation, because I think, as you mentioned on the pod last night, Yates was slated to play as we understand it on the team sheet, and then scribbled out sort of relatively late on. So we don't know what's happened there. Fingers crossed that's not a major issue. And then obviously Anderson's gone off towards the end of that game, which is a concern. I think before those things, I would have had absolutely no interest in signing a centre mid unless there was someone who added real, sort of genuinely quite elite qualities for us, because I think we've got a decent blend there already. I think when I think I was on with Emily and Mark, perhaps this week or last, and we spoke about that sort of centre mid position, and I could see the benefits to signing Andre, who we'd been linked with, but looks like he's on his way to Wolves. Sort of genuinely elite playmaking passer from a deep position, which is something that we just don't really have. Someone who can really progress the ball in that way, or a real destroyer, a real monster in that position to sort of rival Sangari for the role and push him for that position. I'm not sure that this guy is really ticking either of those boxes. But again, I really don't have any great insight into him. So the numbers don't look like they give you any sort of massive level of excitement. And I'm just not convinced it's the type of player that we need. But, if the recruitment team are spotting young, talented players that they think they can develop and make better, then, I've been consistent in saying that's the model for us. So I'll support them in doing that.
A few other names linked yesterday. A winger from Lyon, whose name escapes me, but it looks like Fulham and Everton are in for him. I'll look that up while Simon's talking. And Neto, a goalkeeper, was also linked. Ramsdale looks like he's going to Southampton. I think it's on a permanent or an obligation to buy, which is a really interesting signing for him and for them. And Sam Johnston, who was also linked with us, is going to Wolves. Just any thoughts on anything else we need? Simon, specifically, I'm really struggling to say that word today, the goalkeeper, and anything else that you're looking at?
Yeah, and goalkeepers endlessly rumoured and linked with Forest, it seems, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years. I thought Miguel did really well last night. I know there was the goal, and maybe some of the blame is laid at him, but they kind of did just stroll through our back line very quickly. But he made a couple of good saves after that, and good penalty save as well in the shootout. Thought he did a good job. And based on that, I'm not sure I'd be rushing out to find another goalkeeper, unless it's someone who is going to be a clear head and shoulders improvement and becomes the first choice. I know Neto's been linked. I'm not sure he strikes me as being that goalkeeper that would clearly dislodge Matt Sells and clearly, if not doing that, become number 2 ahead of Miguel. So I wouldn't be rushing around finding a goalkeeper. I think striker is the absolute priority. Midfield is an interesting one. It sounds like Bove, however his name is pronounced, is close to joining, or is very much kind of heading that way. I guess the other factor is we don't know. I've not seen any update on Danilo. I know he was due to have surgery this week, I think, and then the club are going to have a better idea of the timeline for his recovery. So if they have that better idea and they now know it's going to be more like 6 months instead of 3 months, then you can understand going into the market for a midfielder, especially if there is something, hopefully not, injury-wise happening with Ryan Yates as well. Again, I've not seen both play, so someone might be able to better place to say what his exact role is. But I do think there is the need to have someone who can do that Sangare number 6 role, because I don't think we've got anyone else at the club that can do exactly that job of just breaking up play and giving it to someone who's better on the ball. I think Yates has kind of filled in that role before, but it doesn't suit him, and certainly not as what we've seen this season of Yates being a bit more attack-minded and being able to go forward. I think he's had a really strong start to the season, so again, hope he's not injured. Anderson definitely isn't a 6, and Dominguez I don't think is a 6 either. So if this guy's coming in to have cover for that role, and generally in the midfield where all of a sudden we could become a bit light, then that's not a bad idea. Aside from that, I think we look pretty good. I think we'll probably touch on some of the performances last night, but I don't see any requirement for an additional winger or wide forward based on the performances of Jota, and especially Jota. I thought was excellent last night. I think the young fullback De Silva was excellent. It may be that he gets moved out on loan because we are quite stacked in that position. But if we're thinking about signing another fullback, I won't be rushing to do that based on his performance last night. So yeah, I think it's just one or two. Midfielder, yeah. Striker, definitely.
Let's move on to talking about last night a bit more. Which players impressed and which players are pushing for a start, which will lead us on to the Wolves game. Just before we do, 350 people watching live, which is great, as this was a hastily scrambled link after the first one failed. So do us a favour and hit like on the stream. That will make a big difference, and subscribe as well if you haven't already. And then Saturday, obviously we're playing Wolves, so get down to Nav straight after the Oasis and gig. We've been saying all week it's free to get in. I'm sure it'll be packed. I'm sure it'll be really good, and you can get your post-match food and post-match beers after the victory against Wolves, which I do think will happen, and we'll discuss that shortly. Just before then, Pete, just going back to last night, I think I totally agree with Simon. Loads of players impressed. Would any of them be really out of them? Sorry, who's really pushing for a start imminently in the Premier League? Would you say?
Well, I mean, Jota will be obviously the name on a lot of people's lips, and was certainly on the commentators' lips a lot last night. I mean, he got the man of the match award, scored a brilliant instinctive goal in the box. I mean, what I liked most about him was how competitive he was. He was battling and scrapping from the very first minute. I loved seeing him win 2 or 3 excellent aerial duels, flicking the ball on, and putting Bruno on his arse as well was fun. Just absolutely no airs or graces about the guy. No inferiority complex, coming in a game against big names and on a big stage. He's a little warrior, and that sort of attitude I think will take him places. I think he's probably, instinctively, I'd say he's probably slightly further away from the first team than perhaps a few of the others. I mean, for me, the 2 most exciting ones, I guess, for the long term were Sosa and Moreira. They weren't necessarily the best 2 players for the whole time they were on the pitch, but I think the eye test suggests that we've picked up a couple of really serious footballers there for very little money, really, in the grand scheme of things. Sosa showed glimpses of genuinely elite end product, a constant threat. I love that sort of hard working direct runner that he looks like, real sort of natural winger instincts. I mean, that cross as well was absolutely outrageous. I was really enjoying just rewinding that and watching that. And I think Moreira looks like he's been playing at this level for a couple of years now, which is pretty... We've got a guest on the pod. Hello, pal. And I thought that was pretty incredible, to be honest, given his career path, where he's hardly played any football. I think those 2 will both stake a bit of a acclaim over the season. Moreira perhaps less so, because it's obviously time for him to develop and such like, and he's got good names ahead of him. But I think he's showing that he can do that, and that's, I think, pretty remarkable. Moreno is probably the other big one. I think he's going to have a pretty big impact on the side probably quite quickly. Probably not on the weekend, because he looks pretty gassed to me, and obviously hasn't played a great deal of football recently. But I think Nico and Aina are going to have to be on their toes immediately. And I guess the natural thought process is probably that Nico Williams' place is under threat relatively quickly from Moreno. So hopefully that just keeps people on their toes and keeps performance levels high. I mean, there's lots though, isn't there? You know, Miguel had a really good game. I did think he was not great for the goal, but I wouldn't blame the goal on him, because he was put in a situation that he shouldn't have been in. It looked a little bit messy to me, and he put the ball in a dangerous position, which isn't ideal. But for the rest of the game, I thought it was great. And watching that sort of mad traction engine of a foot boot the ball at the pitch is fun as well. And there's so much to be positive about. I thought Anderson Dominguez did a great job in the middle, and I think Anderson, now that Danilo's out, is likely to be our first choice for that role anyway, so not really pushing for a place. But I think Dominguez showed what he can do in there, as we've seen a few times in his Forest career. I think, you know, if he can get a run, he'll make make a real fight for a place. So I don't think I'll be starting any of them this weekend, unless there are injuries or fitness worries elsewhere, which there may be after last night. But, you know, that's just one game. But I'm very excited about them forcing their way into the thinking of Nuno, and particularly excited about having real options on the bench on Saturday, come what may with the game state. In whichever way we need to change the game, I think we've got real options there. We've got options to go to playing wing backs. We've got options to bring on direct runners out wide and players who are going to harry and cause problems. So I think it's a really positive situation to be in. I'm probably not starting any of them on Saturday, but I think there are players looking over their shoulders, and that's a great position to be in.
Just what I remember, there's a mad story about Miguel in the Athletic today that I don't think any of us were aware of. When he was 7, his parents were murdered. He was in the house with his brother, and they hid, and obviously that has a huge impact on him for the rest of his life. So do check that out. That's crazy. From a football point of view, I thought he was really good. I don't particularly blame him for the goal, and I thought he was great. And Jota Silva was really... One other point about Jota Silva is he puts himself about, like Pete says, and I can see that he could play as a central striker in an emergency. He wasn't bad in the air, so that really bodes well. Let's go on to lineups or line up. I have to apologise to both the chaps for... I asked them, what's your team? And then they send it to me, and I haven't done a graphic because this morning was a bit of a cluster. So I've only got my own one, which looks kind of selfish, but they're all very similar. So I'll put my team up, read it through, and then we'll chat around it as normal and get the opinions from Pete and Simon as well. My team then, there's one change from Southampton for me. Sells in goal. Aim right back, Milenkovic, Murillo, Alex Moreno left back, fitness dictated, Sangare and Anderson in midfield. Again, Anderson fitness concerns. Elanga, Gibbs White and Hudson-Odoi in support of Chris Wood. So I think there are a few marginal calls. I'd need to see a little bit more of Miguel. I don't know how we do that now we're at the Carabao Cup, but maybe his kicking isn't on the level of Sells, and Sells kept clean sheet in his last game. So I'm not in a rush to remove him from the team. And obviously this is all assuming we don't sign anyone, which we might do, but I don't think anyone we sign comes into the team straight away anyway. So pretty comfortable with the goalkeeping situation. Moreno, I think he added something different. You could see his quality on the ball, his quality going forwards. So I'd be fine with him coming into the team. Like Pete says, Nico's the one most at risk, but equally he looked good against Southampton. I don't see any reason to make any other changes. I just think we've got really good options off the bench. And the big thing is, if you're Callum Hudson-Odoi, you can probably thinking now, well, actually, I can't afford 2 or 3 bad games, so I'm going to lose my place. And that applies to pretty much just about everyone. A few, I don't know again how online this is, but a few people questioning Sangare. I've got no questions about him at all. Again, missed a penalty, but players do it. People saying, "Oh, when he was walking up, I could tell player X was going to miss." I think there's a lot of hindsighting in that. You walk every player I look at and think, "Oh, he might miss." I look at Milenkovic and think, why is the centre half taking a penalty? But the game's changed and centre half can stroke them in as well as anyone. So, no concerns about Sangare for me. and I feel like that's a team that can definitely beat Wolves. We'll talk a bit more about Wolves in a sec, but Pete, Simon, I'll go to you first. Your team was unchanged. Any players that from that unchanged list that you're thinking actually they're under threat or not?
Yeah, I think to your question about who last night is closest to getting into the starting 11, it's Moreno. Clearly it's Moreno, because he's got Premier League experience as well. So he knows the league, he knows the opponents, and he played excellently last night. So he's ahead of a Jota or a Sosa in my eyes in terms of getting into the team. I just feel that the team that played against Southampton did such an excellent job. As well as forcing your way into a team, there's got to be a player that kind of isn't playing at that real right high-end top level that warrants them being dropped from that team. So I would stick with the same 11, but Moreno is the one that probably comes into that starting 11. If not on Saturday, then probably after the international break, once he's bedded in a little bit more. But aside from that, I thought the performance at Southampton was excellent. I thought we were on the front foot. Everything is coming together really nicely. Again, to your point around Hudson-Odoi and Elanga have got real competition on the bench now that is going to push them hopefully to a level and more consistency of performance week in, week out. I was stood next to podcast favourite Greg Mitchell last night at the game, and we both commented.
But okay.
And we both commented that if this is our second string team that we were watching last night, the level has just gone up remarkably, even compared to last season. There were 11 players on the pitch last night that could all be starting for us, and you don't feel like they would be out of place. So that's really important that we've got all of these great bench options, and we've got players that are really pushing hard to be included in the starting 11. But in terms of Saturday, I'd stick with the Southampton 11.
A few people in the chat saying around Miguel's kicking, Jay and a few others saying it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I don't think it was bad. He can smash it far, but I think Sells might have the edge from what I've seen. And it's just such a small sample size, just one game to be making a definitive decision on goalkeepers either way. So I think I'll definitely place a lot more trust in what Nuno and his team see than what we're saying on here in goal. But just in general, Pete, I suppose, you're Nico's biggest fan. Is he the one most at risk in the short to medium term? And just any other comments on that team?
Yeah, I think he definitely is the one most at risk in the short term. My instinct is that's probably the lineup that looks like our first choice lineup, barring injuries and such like after the international break, as Simon said. Whether Moreno can come in and start again after last night, I don't know. If he can, then I think he's an immediate threat. You're right. I am a massive fan of Nico's because of what he's given us. I think he was fantastic, second half of last season, and thoroughly deserved his spot in the team. But Aina gives us options and a skill set that Nico doesn't. They're very different players. I think it's absolutely ideal to have them both competing for a role in the side. And I've got every faith that the competition will bring out the best in Nico, because he's an absolute terrier of a lad, and I don't think he'll give up the fight easily. And he, I think even if he does lose the shirt, there's every chance he wins it back during the course of the season. And this is sort of where we want to be as a side, isn't it? I guess, we've been in the Premier League for a couple of years now. We're slowly graduating through having that sort of guaranteed first 11, or which I guess isn't something that we really had an awful lot given how many footballers we had, but certainly having a sort of best set of players that are going to be quite hard to shake off given what you've got on the bench and such like. We're moving now from that to having a real squad that can press for places, and that's exactly where I want to be. I think there are options for Saturday now, fitness depending, and that's pretty exciting, really. I'm going unchanged if I'm the manager, but I can certainly see the argument for a few names. But for me, the argument now is that perhaps they get half an hour off the bench, or even more if we're struggling. And I'm not worried about it. I think we can make changes at half time and make a difference now. And that's just a great place to be.
Let's talk a little bit more just about the wider starts of the season and Wolves. This is a really small sample size again of data, but this is stuff that Mark used on FPL Black Box last night and dropped in our chat. And it's just on team defence and team attack data. And it's just interesting because we're third for defence, and I think we might be third for attack as well. In terms of we've not given up many big clear chances. Expected goal conceded is 0.68 from 2 games. Liverpool top, Man City second. Interestingly, Newcastle, who've had the same fixtures as us, are 19th against Bournemouth and Southampton. So again, super small data size, but that's promising. And then team attack. Again, we're third, 1.88 XG for 2 games. Liverpool and Man United, interestingly, are top from their 2 games. And Wolves, where are Wolves? 12th on that table. And they're 11th for team defence, which is interesting. That Chelsea game, they conceded 6 goals, but Chelsea put away some blinding chances. So we'll talk more about Wolves just in general on the starts of the season then, Simon. Do those charts bore out what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think it's been really encouraging. Shame we didn't see the game through against Bournemouth. We probably just about deserved to do so, although they did improve a great deal in the second half. Southampton, I felt just comfortable the whole game, even when we went 1-0 up. And I know lots of people were panicking about the usual, we're going to concede late on, because that's just what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 seasons, or 2 or 3 decades, actually. But I felt really comfortable. And I left the ground kind of with my head held high and shoulders back, feeling like we've really moved forward this season already. I feel more confident going to games. I just feel like it's more organised, it's more settled. How many of that 11 that started at Southampton were with us last season and playing regularly last season? It's evolved really nicely. So I think we've had a really solid start. I think we've got a great opportunity against Wolves to improve that even further. And if we're sitting on 7 points, or even if we're sitting on 5 points at the end of this weekend going into the international break, I think that's been an excellent start for us.
Just realised I've got to leave my house in 15 minutes to travel to Nottingham for a meeting. So we'll probably have to accelerate the progress shortly. Quick word for our second sponsors, Home Move Estate Agents. If you saw last week's show and you bought the house that we advertised off the back of it, can you let me know? Because I would really love a small cut of the sale, or if you viewed it, that would be fantastic. But Home Move Estate Agents are the people for you. Do get in touch with Ben Sales. His number is on the screen. His website is in the description, and they're 5-star rated on Google. So they're the people for you if you're looking to buy or sell a house in the Nottingham area. Just quickly, Pete, thoughts on Wolves? Pretty horrific start. Obviously 6-2 home defeat against Chelsea, and they lost it away at Arsenal. Can we read too much into them? I'm friends with Wolves fans, and quite a few of them are very disgruntled with the direction of traffic around transfers and shape of the squad. A good time to play them, or are you still worried?
I think there's a general atmosphere around Wolves that has been there for a little while now, particularly with the sort of financial situation. I think they've sort of been cutting their cloth quite tightly, haven't they? I think the performance of the side, and I guess the management of Gary O'Neill last season, sort of saved them from a lot of that stuff. I think there were a fair few people worried that they might be on their way down to that sort of relegation dogfight, but obviously didn't end up there. I mean, I think it would be wrong to go into this game thinking that they're really on the ropes because of recent results. It wasn't a brutal defeat against a very good Arsenal side, and the Chelsea game was a bit of a freak show, really. I think, did Chelsea only have an XG of 2 or something along those lines? I think
it was lower than Wolves. They just had some amazing finishes, and Wolves were decent first half.
Yeah, I mean,
they do have a lot of defensive issues. Sorry, Pete.
No, and I did think Wolves threatened a few times as well from what I saw of the game. But I mean, it can't have helped confidence, and you always think there's a potential fragility to get at there when a team has gone through such a harrowing result, even if they didn't really deserve it. I think their likely 11 is probably weaker now than it was at the end of last season, and I also wonder if there could be some scars from last season too. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that they won 1 of their last 11 games, something along those lines. Lost 4 out of the last 5. So I think if we can get on top and get on top quickly, we can cause them real problems. Their defence doesn't look great to me. I thought they left gaps for Chelsea to exploit, and granted, Chelsea really did do that, and it was, I think it was freak quite how well they took those chances, but they did give opportunities, and it just looked like there was a lot of space between the players to me when Chelsea were countering, and that gives me hope that we can do something similar. I think so. I think they're vulnerable there. If we start this game like we have the last two games and give that sort of first 45 minutes performance that is genuinely promising, shows real intent, look to get on top, try and dominate the ball, but also then spring the counter quickly when they have got it and we win it, I think we can make an impact. It may be the case that we need a 90-minute performance this time rather than a 45-minute one, because we've seen, recently and painfully, what someone like Cunha can do in a single moment. He can change a game out of nowhere. So we'll have to be on it. But I'm pretty hopeful about it. And like I say, I don't think the team's as good as it was last season. I'm hoping there's a bit of a sort of general vibe of uncertainty or things not being great right now. That back line, I think you can get at them. There's going to be space behind Aït-Nouri. The centre backs don't look brilliant to me. I'm not sure if Doherty, the sort of player who's going to be able to handle Callum Hudson-Odoi if he's in the full flow. So there's definitely hope there for me. There's a few players in that Wolves team that worry me. The central midfield partnership, I think, is pretty elite, to be honest. Gomez is an absolute beast in the tackle. Probably not a huge amount of progression or threat, but he facilitates the rest of the players. Lamina seems to bring so much to them: real box-to-box threat, defensive asset, box crasher, all that sort of stuff. And then I think Cunha and Aït-Nouri bring a sort of real X factor to them, and we'll have to watch out for both. So they've got real threats. They're a good side, but I just think if we can get at them quickly, get at them early, get an early goal, maybe even get a second this time, and just show a little bit more composure. Perhaps just don't try not to let them into the games as much as we have done. I appreciate that the opposition are always going to have moments, especially when you're up and they're desperate to get back into the game. But it does feel like we've just backed off a little bit too much and just given them a little bit more momentum than perhaps we needed to. So if we can build on that, build on the performances we put in already, I think there's a result there for us, and hopefully a really positive performance.
It looks like they're signing Andre as well, the Brazilian midfielder we were very, very tentatively linked with. I did see a tweet saying he's been linked with 10 Premier League teams, so half the league. It looks like Wolves are the ones they've got in there, so that's good business for them, but obviously I don't think he'll be a factor in this game. Right, quick word, shameless plug for our live show next Thursday, 7 p.m. at the NAV, last one of the year before the weather turns. So it'd be good to see as many people down there as possible. Lewis is on the panel with podcast regulars. We'll discuss the Wolves game, the transfer stuff, the season in general. We'll do a Q&A where you can throw questions at Lewis about his career, about the game, about pretty much anything football related, and you can ask Temps and Mikey and Greg questions as well if you want. But that's the general plan. So link for tickets is in the description. That's my shameless plug. Simon, what is your shameless plug and part of the reason that you're here beyond your football expertise and valued opinions?
Oh, definitely no football expertise. Yeah, I only appear when I've got something to plug, haven't I? So yes, I announced yesterday that I, as I've previously stated a few times, I'm not doing any more books, but what I am going to do at the end of September is an exhibition. And it's going to be an exhibition of some of my photos, but more broadly, it's an exhibition of Forest fan culture. And it'll involve fashion and kits and design and the amazing work of Forza Garibaldi. And it's all going to kind of come together in this one-off exhibition that's taking place at Backlit Gallery near Sneinton Market. For anybody who knows it, it's an amazing gallery space, which they've done an incredible job creating, and have had loads of incredible exhibitions there. And when I walked in for the first time, I was like, wow, if I managed to pull off an exhibition in here, it's going to be quite something. So I'm really excited by it. It's going to be on from Thursday the 26th to Sunday the 29th of September, which obviously revolves around the Fulham game on the Saturday. It's completely free for people to come along, so you just need to turn up. I think we're going to do between the hours of 12 and 5, aside from the Saturday, which will be the morning. We're just confirming exact timings on that one. But yeah, it'll be completely free for people to come along. There's going to be, as I say, lots of my photos, but more broadly, lots more interesting things. There's a couple of really special exhibits in it, which I won't mention too much, but well worth coming along to see. And there's also quite a cool interactive element, which again, I'm not going to give away any detail of, but well worth coming along and getting involved with. So really excited to be doing it. I hope it's going to be as epic as it is in my head at the moment. And yeah, I hope people come along and enjoy it.
Excellent. If you've seen Simon's work as our glorious banners on Twitter, then you'll know it's well worth checking out. And if you haven't, it's still well worth checking out. So go down, show some support for that. We'll be back tomorrow. Just before I throw it to Pete for any final thoughts, plan for tomorrow is 6 p.m. with me and Greg, and we'll do like a live phone in. So I'll drop the link in the chat and open the floor to people to come on and have their say about the window and the Wolves game and stuff like that. Then we'll be back at 9 p.m. with Lewis through till 11. And then a few podcast regulars and contributors, Pete included, to talk about the final 2 hours of the transfer window. Pete, any quick final words before I jump in my car and try not to break the speed limit?
Yeah, just a very quick one. I thought it might be nice to say a couple of words for Ben Perry. It's always a buzz to see another academy graduate making the step up into the first team squad. And I heard last night from someone who knows him that he's a lad who shows a real sort of Ryan Yates style work ethic to get to where he is, a sort of insatiable appetite to work on himself. So no doubt that sort of attitude will serve him brilliantly in his future career here or elsewhere. So congratulations to the lad. Congratulations to everyone who's been and is still involved in his ongoing development.
Good stuff. Lovely stuff. Do us a favour, hit like on this video if you haven't already. It does make a big difference. Subscribe, consider becoming a channel member. Keep lovely iTunes reviews coming, and 5 stars on Spotify would be great. Like I say, we shall be back tomorrow, and then Saturday after the Wolves game. It's good to have 350 odd people with us we were only on last night, so it's good to have people back with us the next morning. Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to come on.
Yeah, we'll have you back on soon. You don't have to have something to plug. We'll have you back on, definitely. No problem at all. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Good. Glad to hear it. Back tomorrow with Pete and everyone else. But in the meantime, if we don't see you then, we shall see you soon.